I was, and just trying to make my best decisions as a good guy, as best as I can, private guy, do my own thing, just living my life for me. And anyway, so there's my background of what happened. Well, we'll move up all the way to a year ago. We had a Christmas party at work over in Bossier City, and I went over there, and I remember my boss man, his name is Paul Reeser. He got him a new sports car, finally. I've had a whole bunch of sports cars, and he finally got one. But I was so excited. I pulled up in the parking lot, and I saw it sitting out there, and I was like, that's his 350Z, or 370 Nissan Z. It was awesome. And it was perfect color, my color too. It was like silver gray. Anyway, so I go in, and it was his car. So I'm just really excited about that. And so he's, it's like, after the meeting, I want to go drive it, and he beat me to it. He's like, after this party, you need to go drive my car. And I was like, yeah, because you've driven all mine, hot rodding them. But I waited around after that meeting. All right. And I'm not used to holding one of these things, so if I do this, but yeah, so we go for a ride in his 370Z after this Christmas party, and I'm just having a good time. I mean, I'm in Bossier, and I'm shifting gears, and he turns over there and he says, "Scott, I have a problem." I said, "Oh Lord." And I said, "Okay, Paul, what's your problem?" And he says, "Well, I got this problem at church." I'm thinking, I don't know nothing about church. But he says, I'm having this problem. He said, I don't understand, and this is just kind of paraphrasing words that I remember. It's been a year. He said, I don't understand how to get my congregation to understand that we cannot be a people of hate, that we have to love. Yes. And I was like, I knew exactly what he was talking about. I knew I'm the gay guy, what's the gay guy there? And of course in the news and the media, it was just everywhere you look, gay marriage this, gay marriage that, this preacher saying this, and you just hear a bunch of angry words and division and not understanding on either side of the fence, and so I looked at him. I said, I don't know nothing about that. I said, but what I do know, I said, and this is the only thing that I knew. I knew one thing, and it comes from going to church with my grandma. My mama is in heaven right now, looking at me. I was at church. I was probably 8, 9 years old or something like that. This was a Church of God. They would get down in that church, and man, they would sling in the spirit. Just touch your head with the Bible and you fall backwards. But I was seeing all that as a kid. You're like, wow, I wish that would happen to me. But but this was the only thing that I knew. This was my answer to him. I mean, and it was because it was all I knew. Was well, Paul, I was at church with my grandma one night, and they were doing all that, and the preacher actually pointed at me and said, "Come here." And I went up there, and I was slain in the spirit. And I was a young guy, and I said, I just remember as I fell back, as I lay on that floor, and I just remember this amazing peace that went through my whole body as I was laying there. And it was just awesome. It was that moment that gave me faith in God and in a Creator. That one moment, as that spot got me where I'm at today, because I laid there on that floor and I felt His presence. And so I've always known there's a God. If it wouldn't have been for that, I'm one of them smart guys that would say, "Prove it to me." Where's God? Kind of guy. But He touched me then, and He knew that I would need that for this day. So anyway, I was laying there on that floor too, and I got confusion out of it because as I was laying there, the very first thought that came to my mind after feeling the presence of the Lord was, am I changed? 8, 9 years old. Am I changed? And then, no, I was not changed. He touched me, I felt him, but somehow or another, I was the same. So that confused me. And then, of course, as you grow up and just everything you hear about, church and God and sin and people and gay and straight, you can't be gay and come to church in a way. It didn't fit, which I'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, that moment, that was my answer to Paul. That was it. And that was all I could give him. I didn't know nothing about church. The other stuff that I knew he didn't want to hear, I'll tell you that. And it was just from experiences. But anyway, all that's changed now. Well, that experience in that car, I couldn't get it out of my mind. I drove all the way back from Bossier, just 2 hours, and just going through my mind. And, I wanted some answers too, I guess. And so I get home and I'm looking through the internet and I'm looking up articles and I'm reading them. And this one article in particular, stood out for some reason. I have no idea even what it was now. But I sent that link to him, or that part of that article, and also sent it to my sister, Penny. So I send her this. Well, that article, it turned into a conversation which she and I had on the phone. And a tough conversation, turns out. I mean, it was a tough conversation. It was a real conversation. One that you say some things, you still love each other at the end of it, But I had a conversation with her and was reflecting on that night while I was laying in bed. And it's dark in my room, but I will tell you one thing. God lifted a veil off my mind in just a moment, in a fraction of a second. And when it pulled that veil off, God said to me, He said, you ain't never been to church, boy. You've never been. And what I mean by that is I had been to church with my mama. I had been with a friend. I had been with a mother-in-law we had to go for Christmas. We had to go for Mother's Day. We had to go for Easter. She kept us at all of her little church functions. But anyway, I had been my whole life for somebody else. But in that one moment, I was 38 years old, and all of a sudden, I know a brand new piece of information about myself, and it was that I had never been to church before. How did I not know that I had never been to church? I never chose to go for me, and I never chose to go for God. There's a lady on TV, she always talks about her aha moment. Never had one of those until that night. Aha, yeah, I've never been. So I decided, well, God, I'm going to church. I'm going to go. And I'm laying there, and as immediately when I decided I was going to church, I knew what church I was going to go to. But I didn't know anything about this church, but I knew I was going to go to that church on Highway 4. I didn't know the name of it. I didn't know if people went here. I was one of the kind of guys that had been down the road far enough in my life without church and church people around that people didn't really talk to me about church that much. And I didn't talk to them about it, obviously. But in that moment, I knew that I was going to come to here to go to church on Sunday. I was so excited about that, just so excited. I just couldn't believe it. I was still in awe that how could I not know that? I thought I knew everything. But next day, I remember I called my sister Penny, and I was just ecstatic. It's like, Penny, you would not believe, because of our conversation, mine and yours, all of a sudden, now I know this that I did not know. I'm going to church, and I've never been. And I said, it's just amazing to know that now. And she says, well, awesome, well, you want to come with me? She goes to church in Monroe. And I was like, well, I'm actually supposed to, I think it was something like, I think I'm supposed to go to that church on Highway 4. She says, I just felt it inside. She said, oh, okay. She said, well, what's the name of it? Well, I don't know. I ain't never been there. I've never been there. So I was explaining to her where it was at. And so later that day, I drove down here and went to the parking lot to see what the name of it was so I could tell her and see what time it started. But so anyway, so this is December. This is probably the second week of December, beginning of that. Uh, well, I got on closer, and y'all, I'm saying this is a long testimony because it's little bitty pieces that God. It's been a year's. Y'all gonna hear a year's worth of stuff tonight, so it's gonna take just a little bit of time. So y'all just bear with me. This is just the first little spot. Uh, but anyway, so I also remember I was so excited I called my friend Delia, and she's my best friend. And I told her about the experience I had, and I was going to go to church. And she said, "Well, I'll go with you." I was like, I didn't want to be rude. I was like, I think I'm supposed to go by myself. I don't know why I knew that. And she was like, "Oh, that's okay. I'll go with you next time." I was okay, good. I was got scared about that, but I was. It was just like I knew I was supposed to go by myself, and so anyway, roll around. We get to Saturday night, and I'm at home and I'm in bed, sleeping, and then I hear this bang, 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 bang on my door. It's probably midnight or after. A friend of mine shows up. Him and his girl, and they were Saturday night. They were in gear, they were partying or whatever, and having a good time. And well, they got me up and kept me up. And I look at it as God. I mean, the devil was trying to keep me from going to church, but God used that to do something amazing, which you're going to hear about in just a second. So they got there and woke me up. And so I go to the kitchen and I sit down at the bar and I put my elbows up on it. And oh my goodness, it hurt. I had a blister right here, like perfect, like a little dime blister on my elbow. And I was like, well, what the heck did I do? And so I just moved my elbow off the counter and just kept talking and hanging out. And well, they kept me up all night, by the way. The next morning, I start showering and getting ready for church, and they they go, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm going to church." "Oh, you're still going?" "Yeah, I'm going to church. I told God I was coming, and I'm going to show up." So I came home to church. It was December. It was a beautiful day outside. It was crisp. It was cool, but sunny, bright, shiny day out there. I had on a long sleeve shirt, and I showed up here and never been. Showed up by myself, and I saw people that I knew. I saw Brandy. I saw my Aunt Betty and several other people that I knew. Well, I came in and, I'm just looking around. Everybody was so nice. The people that did know me made me feel welcome, and the other people that didn't know me, well, they made me feel welcome too. And so I come in and I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to sit. And I was led to this spot directly in front of this thing, about 5 rows back. And that's where I was going to sit. Didn't know why. That's just where I was going to sit. But Brandy came up and she's like, "Well, we sit over here on this side. Do you want to sit with us?" And I'm like, "I think I'm going to sit over here." She was like, "Oh, okay, cool. Well, then Aunt Betty saw me and she came up to me and she just hugged my neck and, "Oh my God, it's so good to see you." And she's like, "Well, I sit over here." So she's like, "You want to sit with us?" I'm like, "I think I'm supposed to sit over here." So I sat down about 5 rows back right there in the middle where Linda's sitting. And we had church. And I tell you, I did not know what I was in for. I did not know. So the music started. And I tell you, and it was a couple of songs that we played tonight, actually, was some of the first 2 songs that I heard here, I believe. And I just started working on my spirit. I mean, I am not an emotional guy, never have been. But man, it just started breaking me down, or speaking to me, and I made it through the songs, and Brother Love started preaching, which I didn't know his name at the time. He was just a preacher at that time, and he just started preaching, and man, it started dealing with me, and I was just like, well, this is weird. This is weird. So it's weird feelings. But he kept preaching, and I kept just getting weak, and For us tall guys, those backs of those benches are really low, and you can't really lean on them. So before it was over with, I was kind of like this. You're trying to hold myself up, but anyway, so he's just dealing with me and dealing with me, and he'd preach some more, and then it came time for altar call, and it was just everything that he was preaching. It was just like, I think he knew he was preaching to somebody. Like it was just different, or maybe it was just my experience, but he was definitely preaching to me. And preaching and preaching, and every time someone would come up, I'd think, "Oh no, that's not me. It's got to be somebody else." And then something else would come up, and "Oh no, that's got to be somebody else, surely." Well, we get to altar call, and it's getting close to the end of church here, and I'm just having all these feelings, and I just keep pushing them down, and run into let's see, Scott Mercer was sitting over here somewhere, and Brother Love was standing over in this area, and Scott got up and came and interrupted Brother Love, and was said something, and then went and sat back down, and Brother Love said, God has just told Scott Mercer, I'm talking to somebody that has something wrong with their elbow. Whoa, what are you talking about? Whoa. So I'm thinking, oh Lord. And then I started going, somebody else got something wrong there, but that's what somebody else. Let's see somebody move. And look, and then church ended that fast. It was just like I was arguing myself. And the next thing I know, church was dismissed. Was sitting right there in that spot. Those double doors right there, when they're open, you see out to the glass doors and you can see out into the parking lot. And church ended, and when it did, I turned around and looked my way out of there. Those doors came open. And when I looked out there, I saw that sunshine, beautiful sunshiny day. And as soon as I saw it, boom, God said, you leave this church today without acknowledging me, and you will walk out into a darkness that you have never known. Well, I didn't move, y'all. I'm just saying, I wasn't going nowhere. So I started looking for the preacher, and everybody's moving around. I mean, I couldn't find him, and I started freaking out. But I'm not leaving this church today. I'll tell you, I wasn't going to do it. And my Aunt Betty comes up to me, and she's just, she was so happy, and she was, I thought I was in a Charlie Brown schoolroom. all I heard was her dad and somebody eating, and all I could do was say, "Where's the preacher?" No, isn't that? Where's the preacher? And so she was just like, and then she said, "Eat," and I'm like, "Where's the preacher?" So she looked at him. She said, "Oh," and she grabbed my arm. And she just go find him. And so she just takes me, and she takes me around people, and I couldn't speak. I mean, I just couldn't speak at this moment. I was so, I just couldn't speak, So thank God for bringing me to find Brother Love, Aunt Betty. Well, we found him. He was at the front door up there. And she says, "Hey, Brother Love, this is Scotty. My nephew, he needs to talk to you." And Brother Love, of course, he don't know what's going on. He's like, "Oh, sir." And she's like, boom. I think she punched him in the belly. I don't know. Because he kind of jumped. And she said, "No, now. He needs to talk to you now." And so he's like, "Okay, my office is that way." So I just went that way. I mean, I was standing about 4 foot from him when this was happening. And he said, "Office," I went this way. So we get in his office, and I never met the man before, and of course he didn't know who I was. And he closed the door, and I sat down in this red chair in his office and just bawled. I couldn't say a word. I was trying. I was, and my name is Scott, And he's just kind of looking at me. And when I'm saying this, I'm also trying to get my button undone. And so it goes something like, and something wrong with my elbow. Yeah. so so that was definitely his first experience with me, and and he calmed me down, and we started talking, and I finally got to tell him my name and who I was, and that what was going on, and we prayed, and so that was my first day of church, the December the 14th of last year. Uh, yeah. So God, He knows what He's doing, y'all. I mean, when the time is right, I mean, He lined so many people up just to get me to church. He lined my boss man up. He lined my sister up. I mean, he did have to go buy him a sports car to get me. You know what I'm saying? But thank God he bought that sports car. We might not have had that conversation, right? But yeah, so many people that he used, and my Aunt Betty getting me here, and but for somebody that wasn't a Christian and didn't go to church and wasn't a part of a church, that how God so much led me that I knew that I was supposed to be here at this church. I knew where I was supposed to sit on this church, and it was 6 months after that first experience that I realized, before I realized that if I would have sat with him, he never could have revealed to me that sunshine and that darkness. So he sat me there. Even when people tried to get me to move over here, he made sure that I felt like that's where I needed to be. And I remember sitting there, and there was nobody around me 10 foot. I mean, there was just a cushion of people around me. I mean, there was nobody within 10 arms lengths. But anyway, so that's how I got to church. That was my first experience, and so I kept coming back. I kept coming back. I mean, look what God had done. I mean, that's a miracle in itself. The people He used, how He used them, how He got in here, where He sat me, the revelation that He gave me, meeting Brother Love, and I kept coming back. And I think I told him that first visit too that I was gay. And but when I came back to church the next Sunday, he didn't preach about homosexuals going to hell. It probably ran me off, honestly. That's what a lot of Christians resort to is something like that, and because it's helping, they think. But I just needed love. That's all I needed. That's all I needed. And I found that here. Matter of fact, they loved me so much, I kind of backed off a little bit. I said, I'd been to other churches, and it was really easy. I remember it was probably Mother's Day or something that instead of preaching about moms, the guy preached about gay people. I'm like, geez, I mean, if y'all have to hear this every time y'all come to church, I wouldn't like gay people. Give me some good word, But anyway, beside the point. Love. That's what I had in this church. That's what they gave me. I was coming to this church, and I was still gay, but I still came, and they still just loved me. And matter of fact, they kept telling me, yes, they loved me. They kept telling me, God's going to use you to do great things. Well, that, my son, is what ran me off. Just for a minute. They just kept, it was a big thing. God can't use me. I'm the gay guy. He's not, that's too big. That's too big. Why do they keep saying that? Jesus Christ. I just want to come to church and sit there and listen to Brother Love preach. Do I have to do anything? But anyway, so I came for a little while, and then I kind of backed off and went to my little world again because it was getting real. It was getting real. And they really love you. I went back to my little world, and man, it was a dark place. It was not a happy place. The only light I'd had in my life in many years, many years, was when I got to this church. It was my light. I didn't realize I'd started coming to church enough that some of that darkness had faded. But when I stepped back over there and pulled away from the church, man, it got real again. And so there were some things that I felt like I needed to work out on my own before I came back to church too. So I was working on doing that, and then finally I just had to come back to church, and we just picked up where we left off. And I started coming, and I said, okay, when more of me make it right, that I can come to church and they can tell me that God's going to use me to do something, and it not bother me, is I decided, I told God, I said, you can't use me because I smoke cigarettes. Yeah, I'm a smoker. You can't use me. And so I felt pretty confident in that. You know, obviously the other stuff. I but anyway, so I'm coming to church, and I let's see, my mom, she was at the house, and we had my niece Braylee. She's 3 years old, and we were keeping her, and we had to take her back to meet my brother in Winfield, Louisiana. And so I went to church that morning, and it was just great. It was just great. And I've been dealing with a lot of things as a person coming to church, a new person, and nervous, and, you know, just people looking at you and stuff like that. But, you know, and walking to the altar, that's where I'm headed with this, y'all. Walking up to the altar, that was a hard thing for me. Because, you know, people are going to look at you and they might touch you on the shoulder or something. But that day, I stepped out and I walked up and I knelt and I prayed, and I got up and I went back into my seat. And I was like, ooh, that was not bad at all. Why was I so scared of? That was easy. And I felt it was just awesome. You know, I was able to do it, and you know, I don't even think anybody even noticed. I knelt, I prayed, and I went back. It was just awesome. And, you know, so I was feeling good. But anyway, got off church, left church that day. And I remember I had two cigarettes in my in my pack, so I smoked one of them when I left. And I picked Mom up and my niece, and we took off to Winfield. And we meet my brother at Walmart. When I get to Winfield, I smoked another cigarette, by the way. So I had 0 left. So I was going to go buy a carton at Walmart at the gas pumps, and they're cheaper there, if you call that cheap. But anyway, I was standing in line at the Walmart gas station line getting a carton of cigarettes, and there's a person in front of me. And of course, this is summertime now. You know, we done passed winter in December. Been to church a little while, and it's summertime, and it's hot outside, y'all, especially out by those gas pumps. Well, anyway, I'm standing there waiting, and there was this beautiful woman, large woman, wearing a black muumuu dress. She came. You know how they got the Coke machines that line up, and you stand there and you can get you a cold Coke. Well, no joke, she twirled around the end of those Coke machines, around there. She said, "Ooh, it is so hot out here." She said she opened that door on that Coke machine. She said, "I just want to climb up in there," and she pressed her belly up to it. And she said, "It's probably illegal, but I did it anyway." And I'm chuckling at her. It hit me funny, and I'm just laughing at her. And I was like, okay, yeah. Well, this person in front of me, they were through, and it was my time for me to get my carton of cigarettes. And so I stepped up, and I need a carton of Marlboro Lights in a box. And so she gets it, and she rang it up, and it's $57. And I said, you know, I would pay that. That was just what it costs to smoke. And but I said it out loud. I said, $57. Well, she's standing right here behind me. She said, "Whew, that sure is expensive." Well, she said, "That's crazy." That's what she said. She said, "Ooh, that sure is crazy." And I said, "Yes." I said, "What's crazy is I smoke anyway." And I'm doing my thing, and I sign it, and I'm telling her that as I turn, and she says, "Well, that's all right." She says, "I used to smoke too, but I asked God to take them away from me, and He did." And so I'm kind of turning as she's telling me this, and I said, "Okay, all right." And I said, "God, take these away." Before my foot hit the ground, they were gone out of my mind and my body. Yeah, that's God right there. That I had tried to quit. I had tried Chantix. I had tried all kinds of things, and it wasn't going away. But in that moment, before my foot hit the ground, it all happened so fast that I wanted to argue with God. Whoa, wait a minute. this is my crush. But I didn't say that. I wanted to because they were just gone. That was my crush. It was something. I don't know what it was. It was a stronghold. But God took that away. God took that away in that moment. So I'm walking to my truck with this carton of cigarettes in my hand, and I am wondering, what the heck am I going to do with these? Yeah. So I just put them in the back end of the truck, and I got in the truck, and I just sat there, and I was like, Jesus Christ, really? You know, and my mom, I go and pick her up, and we start heading home, and I was on the way home. My breathing changed. I tend to think that it was God cleaning my lungs out, but my mom can vouch for this. I started breathing like I couldn't get enough breath. It was like that yawn that you need to get that you just can't get big enough. Well, I did that all the way home from Winfield, and it got to the point where she was like, "Do you need me to drive before you kill me or something? You're gonna pass out?" And I was like, "No, I'm fine." You know, it was about like that. Am I wrong, Mom? That's the way it happened. And of course, I didn't know what was going on, but I just felt like I was cleaning these lungs out. And I never smoked a cigarette again. That was it. I never. They were just gone. That desire to smoke was just gone. There was no nicotine fits. There was no headaches. There was no withdrawals. There was no nothing. It was, you know, a cigarette could come up in my eyesight, and it was just like, oh, no need for that. It's gone. And so that was a miracle. I mean, what a miracle that was. And I know that God sent that woman twirling around those Coke machines to set me up, to ask Him to take them away from me. And He showed me. He showed me. He did. And I tell you, somebody had said something about, well, you don't want to smoke even a drag. I'm like, you know, for me to smoke a cigarette will be like a slap in the face of God at this point. I knew He took those away from me. Why? Why would I slap him in the face and smoke even a drag of a cigarette? And but I had no desire anyway. That was just my answer. Damn, that would be stupid. So I never have smoked again, and that's pretty awesome. But let's see, that is, let's see, where are we at now? So many things has happened. I think as we kind of roll into the rest, it starts getting real. You know, there was a lot of things that God had to fix in me. He used different people in different ways to do it. I guess we'll say it as we get to it. But I'll tell you, I went camping to kind of get away from everybody and everything for a weekend. And I tell you, I thought I was getting away. It was a Saturday, and my just having a good time sitting back. But God started dealing with me on Saturday while I was camping, and He wouldn't leave me alone. He would not leave me alone that day. I would, out walking trails, just having time, and He just kept dealing with me, and He was showing me things. He showed me a lot of things. He started showing me my past. He started showing me when I became different. I always thought I was a certain way for a long time. He was just giving me little pieces of a puzzle, is what He was kind of doing, little pieces. But He kind of took me back to whenever I was 5 years old, and I think what it was my first experience with another boy my age. I really can't see what it was, but it was something like that. But that was whenever I was different. It was just a piece of a puzzle. I didn't really know what to do with it, and I might have already kind of knew that, but kind of didn't. But it was there, and then He started showing me other things. He showed me that I'm not accountable to anyone. Showed me I've never had anyone to be accountable to, so to speak. Always, my mom raised me. She did her best, but I'm a strong-willed person. And I wasn't accountable to her. or anybody or God. I just did what I thought was best for me, and I didn't have anybody out there as a goalpost to say, stay on this side, son. You're getting too far away on this side, son. I didn't have that, and so without having that out there, I got out here, by the way that I think, the way that I thought, and but God showed me, no accountability, and didn't have it built in my life. If you do, you're lucky. You're lucky to have an answer to somebody, But anyway, He showed me that this weekend, and He kept showing me things. He started showing me. He showed me when I was different, but He also kind of broke it down for me. Then you had this experience that was affirming with a guy, and then you had this experience with a girl. It was not affirming. It was for whatever reason. It was something. It wasn't a positively reinforcing, affirming experience. And anyway, he kept showing me these things, and it got really lopsided. And so so that was the direction that I was going in my life. I mean, it was just showing me. It was just little pieces of these puzzles. And I didn't know what to do with these pieces of the puzzles. He just kept showing me, and he dealt with me all day and all night until I laid down that night, and I was like, God, please leave me alone. I want to go to sleep. I'm tired. And I finally did get to go to sleep, and I guess he showed me everything he needed to. Well, this was on a Saturday. I wanted to come to church on Sunday, so I had to get up really early that morning, pack my camper up, haul butt back to Columbia, take a shower, and get to church because I didn't want to miss church. And thank God I didn't. Thank God I didn't, because He had more things in store. He just keeps giving. He just keeps giving. And, back to the cigarette thing. I don't know if I didn't point it out. I walked to the altar that day. I gave a little bit to God. He gave so much back to me when He took cigarettes away, by the way. I took a step towards God. God took a step towards me in that moment. I meant to say that back there, but I don't have notes or anything because there ain't no sense in that. But anyway, so I get to church on Sunday. I'm giving a little bit. I mean, it was important to me to get here, and so I did. And it was such a great service that morning. It was about scars. I mean, it was about scars, and it was such a, just the things that we all go through and that we carry with us, we have in here that we don't even realize we have them anymore, but they're there. And and God started working me and showing me some of those things through that. But also that day, it was a new members class, or I say a new members luncheon that we were going to have after church that day. And so after church, I went back there to eat with the preacher and his wife and the other new members that wanted to become members, which I wanted to do. And we ate and had a good time. And he got up there and he started talking about the church and what it is to be a member and responsibilities of that. And then he said about responsibilities. He said, to be a member of this church, there is a way that you have to carry yourself in this community. There is a standard that you have to keep. And if you don't, I am coming to your house, and we're going to sit down and straighten you out. That's what he told all of us, And I just started grinning ear to ear. I'm like, what? I'm going to be accountable to something and someone. For me, it was what God had shown me the day before, and now I came to church that day. I made sure it happened. This man here said he's going to hold me accountable for how I act. I was like, ooh, I guess I better tell him about that other stuff then. But so I felt good about that. I felt really good about that, and we were sitting there looking through the packet of verses that the church stands by, the belief system, and I'm flipping through all these pages, and we get down to this one, and bam, there's that word, homosexual. And it had a verse about it, and the belief system behind that, and that it's not something that is believed. It's strictly by the. I don't want to get it wrong, so I'm just going to say it goes strictly by the way the Bible says. And and I looked at that, and I closed that folder, but I closed it with the peace of knowing that I would be able to sign those papers one day, honestly and truthfully. You know, it wasn't an issue. It wasn't an issue. I was like, well, I can't sign that now because I have a boyfriend. That's what I needed to tell him about because I hadn't really told him about that yet. I mean, we talked a lot about a lot of things, but I'm a private guy. I mean, y'all might not think it now, but I had never talked to him about the guy that I was dating, and but I knew that I couldn't sign those papers until God, I guess, fixed my life. Which at this time, I'm not a believer that God could change that because I never really met anybody that He has, and I've looked. But but yeah, so anyway, I knew that was going to be okay. I just had peace with it, and I enjoyed the rest of my meal. And I went home and came back to church that night. And man, did things step up again that night. It was a good night at church. We didn't really preach. Brother Love didn't preach. We did testimonies that night, and I got another piece of my puzzle that night. But yeah, so we're doing testimonies, and it was really cute. All the kids had these little cardboard things, and they wrote on there, I was sick and God healed me, and it was what God has done for you. Cardboard testimony, I think, something like that. And it was really cute. I enjoyed it. Of course, I wasn't planning on giving a testimony. I was just gonna watch. Well, all the kids made it through, and then a young adult or an adult got up there, and they started giving their testimony. And man, did it just open up in here. It got real. We had, that morning service was about scars. Well, that night we exposed our scars in front of the other members of church that came to church that night. It was real. Am I not lying, Brandy? It was real. And there was some testimonies that just brought me to tears, cried, as it did everybody. I mean, it was the right group of people here, the right ones that spoke and shared their story. And there was a young man here that gave his testimony, and it's what brought. It was the piece of puzzle I was kind of missing that brought everything else that God has been working on and doing for me together. But he was giving his testimony, and he was talking about how he went something like this. And forgive me if I get this a little bit wrong, but something happened to him when he was 13 or 14. He said, and he didn't really know how to deal with it other than to fight against it. To fight, he was 13 and 14, he fought against it and this thing that happened to him. And he, in the process of fighting against that, he became addicted to porn. He took advantage of girls. It was a whole lot of things that he went through because he was fighting so hard to get back on what he felt was right, and he was delivered of all these things. God has brought him through that and out of that. But what that meant for me, what puzzle it was, is that this young man, he was 13 or 14 when something happened to him, and he knew he had to fight. I was 5. I didn't know. I had to fight against an identity that didn't belong to me. Um, I 5-year-old, they just take what you give them, and I did, and I ran with it, and I just always, that's what it was, but when I got that piece of that puzzle, it was just like, wow. And in that moment, in my mind, I quit calling myself gay. I was nothing, and it's probably, I don't know if y'all will understand this, but I went for several days, almost a week, without an identity. I wasn't straight, so I wasn't going to claim to be, and I didn't feel that I was born gay anymore because God showed me something different. So I didn't want to claim to be something that I just didn't know that that's what I was anymore. So I just didn't have an identity. Y'all want that mess with your head right there. You just be nobody for a week and see how that works out. Yeah. So I was nobody for a week, and well, this was Sunday night. I mean, man, the things that was on my mind when I went to bed that night, just wow, God. I had no. I mean, he's peeling the layers back, just one thing at a time, and just showing me things. And gosh, I'm lucky. I'm lucky that He loved me so much that He did do this. All I had to do was take little steps towards Him, and He took big steps towards me. You know. Um, so so anyway, the next day I was headed to work, Ferry, Louisiana. I had to drive by this church to get there, and so I'm leaving to go to work that morning, and I got behind this maroon SUV, and I thought it might have been preachers, which I had no idea what they drove until the prior day when I went back here to eat with them, and there was a maroon vehicle under the thing, and so I was behind this maroon vehicle. I'm like, well, I wonder if that's Brother Love, and he turned in here at the church. I'm like, well, I'm going to follow him in there. And, so I did, and we ended up sitting outside there talking for probably an hour. I don't know how long we talked, but um, we, I had something on my mind. I hadn't had a chance to talk to him about testimony night, and and I pulled up behind him. When he got out, it was him, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna talk to Brother Love. And so we're talking, and he's like, man, can you believe that last night, that service? And I'm like, I cannot believe that last night. I said, let me tell you. And so he said something, and then I told him what that meant for me, and kind of, explain it to him of, how it kind of pulled things together for me. And then I told him, I wanted to be a member of the church. I said, I never really talked to you about this, but I have a boyfriend. And I told him what his name was. And I said, I know that in order for me to move forward with God, that I've got to fix this. I said, but I can't break up with him. I said, I can't do that to him. I said, he don't have nobody. He doesn't have a place to go. And I just can't do it. I said, God's not doing all these great things for me in my life to put him out on the street. I can't believe that. And I said, so will you pray with me that God opens a doorway for that to happen? This was a Monday morning. And so, at the end, we prayed that, and he was a good prayer. When we pray, things happen. I'm just saying. It does. But we added that in our prayer, and excuse me, and so this is on Monday. Well, come Thursday, in a roundabout way. Well, I mean, not in a roundabout way. By Thursday, that prayer had gotten answered. And how it got answered is it's another hugely private part of my life. Something that I fought years on my own for a long time. I don't know how long. Years probably, yeah. But anyway, I'd kind of gotten down and out again, and was having some issues because I had a drug addiction. And it was unmanageable for me anymore. But I hid it, covered it up, stayed away from people, didn't talk to family members because of it, didn't want them to know. And but anyway, I had to I knew that I needed help, and so I called Brother Love and I told him, and I think he might have been a little surprised. Uh, but he immediately, son, that's okay. He says, we got something here at the church. We can spend that time together and we'll go through it together. And you'll get the help you need. And I was ecstatic. It was amazing. You know, he offered his time, his energy to go through a program with him, just me and him, to get me through that weak moment. And I'm happy to say that since that day, I've never had an issue with it again. It's gone, you know. It's been gone. Yeah, that's not an issue anymore. But man, we've got to spend some really good time together and lots of great conversations because of it. But through that, I was so ecstatic. I called the guy I was dating, and I told him what had just happened, and he started crying. He started crying, and I was like, "Why are you crying? This is awesome. This is so great. You just don't know. This was life saving for me. It was life changing." But he was crying, and I was like, "Why are you crying?" And he said, "This is going to be the end of us." So why would you say that? This is a good thing. He said, "Because I'm not good for you." Wow. I sat back. I was like, "Oh, wow." I said, "You're right. You're not. You're not. We'll talk when I get home." And we talked, and I broke up with him that day, that night when I got home. That was it. That was that doorway that God gave me, and it came out of His mouth, out of my boyfriend at the time, his mouth. He's the one that recognized that he was not good for me. God did that. God did that. And so I stepped through the doorway. It was hard. It was very, very hard. But I knew it was a step that I needed in order to move forward with God. This was a Thursday. So the next morning, Friday morning, I come down and I see Brother Love, and I mean we talked for like 3 hours, or I did, talked at him. Poor guy. I think y'all, I'll tell you this, man. I have stretched his beliefs. I've stretched them as to the limit. But you know, he just let God lead us, and thank you for letting God lead us, because you know, he could have stepped in any time and put his own 2 cents in there, and I think it would have turned out all different. But thank you for letting God lead us. I'm talking to him, and you know, for 3 hours we have this conversation, and there's just one thing really that I can remember out of the whole conversation. I have no idea where it even came from, but God used a particular moment in my life about, I guess, you know, my best friend. You know, she's awesome girl. I guess it was probably about a year and a half ago. Y'all bear with me through this one, but I did ask her to marry me, so it's going to be okay. I will say that. It will be okay. But about a year and a half ago, we were out mud riding, and we got home, and we were muddy, and I jumped in the shower, and, you know, I mean, she was my best friend, but, you know, we kept things separated, you know. And so anyway, I'm just in the shower, and I'm just showering, and the next thing I know, the door opens, and she steps in with her eyes closed. Scared the crap out of me. What are you doing? Let me get out of here. So anyway, so that happened. That was like a year and a half ago. All right. And I am going somewhere with this, I promise. Well, that night, Friday night, I saw my preacher that morning, and that night I go home. I lay down and I go to sleep, and immediately as I lay down, I had this vision. It was amazing. God gave me a vision, Didn't know really what it was at the time. It was just something that was happening to me. But uh, above me, I'm laying down in bed. I can see myself laying in bed, but above me, um, God pulls up this experience, this shower scene, so to speak, or whatever experience, and He puts it in front of me up there. And you know how earlier I'd said that God showed me that I'd had these experiences that were kind of warped down one side? Well, He put this experience in me and said, "This is your good, positive, reaffirming experience with a woman." It was innocent. It was not lustful. It was sweet. She had her eyes closed. It was that just a moment. I mean, she doesn't even know why she got in there. It just God must have did it. I mean, I know that might stretch y'all's beliefs a little bit, but like I said, it's all gonna be okay now. But but anyway, He puts that above me, and He tells me, "This is your positive experience," and I'm like, okay. Well, then this picture of her, it turns into, it's like a feather, and it floated, and it lands right here, and it goes inside me. And then God says, "This is the foundation of your new sexual identity." Yeah, yeah. That's how good God is. Um, he set it up just right. I mean, something that happened a year and a half ago. I mean, Jesus. I mean, He knows what He's doing. He set it all up for that moment right there. And um, I was amazed because I didn't know exactly what. I mean, I knew what that meant. I knew God just put His Spirit in me, and I was so ecstatic. I came up out of that bed like Superman. Shoo! I just remember I was laying down, and then I was standing at the dresser hollering, "I'm straight!" You know, that's what. Yeah. 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 I, of course, then I'm like, wow, did that just happen? Did that just happen? So it's midnight. I call my sister, Penny, Penny, what are you doing? Are you awake? Guess what had happened? No, no, no. And I'm just telling her all about it. She's like, what, really? And I'm like, are you at home? Can I come over there? I need to see you. I need to put my hands on you. So I went to my sister's house at like midnight, just so we can have a conversation about what just happened, because it was just, I wanted to make sure it was real, that it was live, that it was there. I had to touch her and feel her and tell her all about it. So my sister and I had that conversation at midnight. I called my mom on the way over there. Yeah, she was like, "What are you talking about?" But um, but anyway, and it was real. It was real. There was one other aspect to this vision that I had. There was three aspects. It was God showing me about this, Him giving me that new spirit, and the noise of the chatter of the people that was all around me, and I just wanted them to quieten down. It was so loud in my bedroom, y'all. I mean, when I got up, I was looking around to see why it was so loud, and it was dead quiet in there. But it was so loud in my vision, and so I got to talk to my preacher about that, and I was telling him about what had happened and how I had the vision, and it came down and how it floated down like a feather. And he's like, "Do you know what that means?" I'm like, "Well, no." And I mean, I know what it means, but I don't know what it symbolizes. And he said, whenever John was baptizing Jesus, he baptized him, and then the heavens opened up, and a dove flew down and landed on Jesus' shoulder. That dove symbolized the Holy Spirit. And this feather floating down, God putting His Holy Spirit in me as my foundation, and who He used how to do it. And Brother Love was, he's a church guy. I didn't know nothing about church. I'm learning though. But that symbolization, I mean, that's how good God is. That I'm just explaining it to my pastor of how it happened, and he's like, "Do you know what that symbolizes?" Wow, God knows it all. He puts it together, the little pieces, and how He works it is just, it's magnificent. It's magnificent. And He will pursue you. He will pursue. He will pursue everyone. When He starts pursuing you, you're gonna know. And I'm just, If he hadn't started, when he does, you're gonna know it. But anyway, so we, so I had all these awesome experiences, and we're almost at the present time, but there's a couple more things, and God will lead me through this too. But anyway, I so thankful, thank you, Lord. But I was having a conversation with my brother, and um, I told him about it. I was just excited, and he just loved me. He's always just loved me and just accepted me, and I was just telling him, reflecting back, I was like, look, what who God has used and how He used them. I said, well, first thing I think I told him was, well, now that I'm straight, it's going to be easy for some people to love me, that didn't quite love me before. I mean, he knew what I was talking about, and he said, let them. Okay. Yeah, I will then. I was really trying to be like good about it, and he was like, yeah, just let them. Okay, brother, thank you, and I did. Uh, but Jesus. I think maybe that's where I'm supposed to stop. I think that's it. I think that's where God has gotten me to. I mean, that's. I think, yeah, that's where I'm supposed to stop. I had something in my mind that I was wanting to say, but it's not supposed to be said. But thank y'all for listening. I would like to give a special thanks to my sister too. Just a little shout out because of her, because she loved me so much. She loved me so good that she loved my partners that I'd had in the past. She loved them so much. I never knew that this Christian woman had feelings to the contrary of gay. You know what I'm saying? Um, she had such a great love in her. She still had her beliefs, who she was. She was confident in that. But yet she loved me so greatly and people in my life that I never knew that she had feelings to the contrary when it came to me being gay when I was. So thank you, sister, for loving me so big that I just never knew. Thank you. I love you.
Wow. Well, I have to admit, Scott stretched me. When he would tell me these stories and tell me it was God, my religious spirit would want to rise up and say, wait a minute, God don't work like that. But the Holy Spirit never would allow us. And we watch God work every step of the way. So once again, Scott, let's go get ready. We're going to do the baptism. 2 commandments is all we got to follow. Love God and love people. And God's love will break every yoke and set the captive free.